What's up everyone, and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Israel Adesanya inspires unlikely fan. After Israel Adesanya defeated longtime rival Alex Pereira at UFC 287, the last stylebender delivered a passionate post-fight octagon interview for the ages, telling viewers that he hopes one day they can all feel the joy he felt in that moment. Backstage after the fight, the good vibes continued to flow as Adesanya and Pereira shook hands and spoke, with the middleweight champion saying that he would love to learn how the former two-division Glory kickboxing champion throws his signature calf kicks. At the time, it seemed as though the feud between the two was finally over and done with. However, since then, the feud has been reignited. During a recent episode of The Joe Rogan Experience, comedian Bert Kreischer, also known as The Machine, revealed to the longtime UFC commentator that after sitting and speaking with Adesanya for quite some time, he couldn't help but feel inspired by Adesanya's outlook on life and the way he approaches celebrating the good moments in life.
I'll tell you, I'm a ride or die for him. He was the nicest. We sat and talked. We just talked about something really important in life is celebrating victories. I love the way he does that. I really do. When he has a victory, he goes on like a celebration tour, and I feel like the universe then is set right.
Kreischer also spoke about earning your Mondays, something his wife taught him, which essentially means that, for comedians, you work as hard as you possibly can over the weekend in order to enjoy your Mondays. The way Kreischer sees things, Adesanya's approach to celebrating the good moments in life, like taking weeks to travel the world and party it up after victories in the octagon, is something that truly inspires him and embodies the idea of earning your Mondays. Currently, Adesanya finds himself waiting in limbo to find out who his next opponent will be. Recently, UFC President Dana White teased a major announcement regarding the last stylebender's next fight, which many believe could be a clash of champions with Jamal Hill at UFC 293 in Sydney. As many have speculated, the UFC could be working to set up a trilogy fight between Adesanya and Pereira at light heavyweight, given the announcement of Pereira fighting Jan Blachowicz at UFC 291 in Salt Lake City, Utah. Sean O'Malley's coach admits feeling bad for Aljamain Sterling. After Aljamain Sterling's UFC 288 win over Henry Cejudo, the bantamweight champion quickly found himself involved in a heated face-to-face stare-down with number one contender Sugar Sean O'Malley, who the UFC quickly whisked into the octagon to promote their inevitable title fight. Shortly after, during the post-fight press conference, UFC President Dana White was asked when the fight would potentially take place. White stated that the bout would likely take place in Boston. In the wake of the event, it was announced that the Boston card, referenced by White, would take place in August, meaning the Funkmaster was in for a rather quick turnaround. Although the fight had been verbally agreed upon and announced by the UFC, Sterling's coach, Ray Longo, revealed that, to his knowledge, no contracts had been signed. In addition, Sterling was quick to point out that he needs to make sure his body is 100% ready before signing on the dotted line. That created quite a bit of controversy, with Dana White then suggesting if the champ wasn't ready to fight, the UFC would create an interim title and have O'Malley compete against Triple C, Henry Cejudo, who had been campaigning for the fight. Despite what many believed to be uncertainty surrounding the fight, Sterling was quick to fire back, saying that he would in fact be competing at UFC 292. The way Sugar Sean's coach, Tim Welsh, sees things, the situation is an unfortunate one for the champ. However, at the end of the day, he trusts the UFC's decision-making. During a recent episode of the MMA Hour, he weighed in on the situation, saying,
it does kind of suck for Aljo, just having to get pushed in there and not really getting a say. But the UFC knows what they're doing. So I just try to stay out of that.
So far, Welsh has managed to keep himself out of the crossfire as O'Malley and Sterling trade verbal blows, giving the Funkmaster credit and calling him the most dangerous champ in the history of the 135-pound division. With the highly anticipated card on the horizon at the end of the summer, there's been much debate about whether the short turnaround for the champ will negatively impact Sterling heading into the fight. Considering he has to cut quite a bit of weight in order to make the 135-pound title limit, it'll be interesting to see how things play out when the two men step into the octagon. When the two collide at UFC 292, how do you see things playing out? Drop your predictions for the fight in the comment section below. Conor McGregor teases massive transition. After former UFC fighter Platinum Mike Perry picked up a big victory over Luke Rockhold under the BKFC banner, the outspoken bare-knuckle standout invited Conor McGregor, who was in attendance as a spectator, into the ring for an impromptu stare-down. The Irish star quickly obliged and entered the ring with a BKFC title belt on his shoulder, creating quite a bit of buzz on social media, as many speculated as to whether or not the UFC brass would be furious over their biggest star cutting free promos for another promotion. According to McGregor, although he still has his sights set on a return to the octagon, he also recently teased a potential move to bare-knuckle boxing in the future. During a recent interview with Ariel Helwani for Matchroom Boxing, the former champ stated,
I would do it. I would do it. Yes, I would. And I'm happy to do it. Yes, I would do it, for sure. It's hard to get a boring fight in it. And it's actually almost impossible for a boring fight to happen in it. And I tell you why. Where no other discipline or sport can say that. And say that there's a 0% chance of a boring fight. We can all have a snooze fest. Boxing can be a snooze fest. MMA can have a snooze fest as well. There's no chance of a boring fight in the bare knuckle because...
As McGregor explained, what makes bare-knuckle boxing so exciting is the fact that even a jab can cause a cut, which brings the crowd to their feet and creates a unique sense of panic for fighters. Of course, this isn't the first time that McGregor has spoken about his desire to step inside the ring again to compete as a boxer. Following his 2017 boxing match against Floyd Mayweather, McGregor told Ariel Helwani in a separate interview that he planned to not only compete in boxing again, but also capture a boxing world title. Currently, however, he's still under contract with the UFC, with his sights set on returning to the octagon by the end of the year for a highly anticipated bout against Michael Chandler. Do you think we'll ever see McGregor step into the boxing ring again? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Chris Curtis willing to chase Kelvin Gastelum down to 170. In the wake of Chris Curtis's UFC 287 decision loss to Kelvin Gastelum, Curtis planned to appeal the loss and expressed a desire to rematch Gastelum after what he believed to be a controversial decision. Unfortunately for him, in the wake of the fight, Gastelum also announced that he was moving down to 170 pounds for the first time since UFC 200. With the UFC's blessing and a new game plan to make weight, Gastelum is eager to make a run at 170 pounds. Given that, many figured a potential rematch between he and Curtis was dead in the water. According to the Action Man, however, he's willing to do whatever it takes to secure a fight with Gastelum, even if it means having to make the cut back down to welterweight. During a recent interview with MMA Junkie Radio, Curtis opened up on the loss, saying that Gastelum cannot avoid a rematch by changing divisions.
I'll always be mad about it. I always say, and I refuse to call it a loss. It's weird for me. Because honest to God, I beat Kelvin Gastelum. Of everybody in that building that night, Kelvin Gastelum's the one guy I beat. Definitely didn't beat the ref. Didn't beat the judges on that one. But I beat Kelvin. He knows I beat Kelvin. But I lost to everybody else in that building that night, unfortunately.
Although Gastelum doesn't have an opponent just yet for his return to welterweight, Curtis is currently preparing for a quick turnaround at UFC 289 in June, where he'll look to return to the win column with a win over Nasruddin Imavov. Whether or not he looks to cut down to welterweight afterwards in pursuit of a rematch with Gastelum, only time will tell. Before we continue, make sure you give that like button some love, and be sure to subscribe to the MMA Zone for all of the latest news. Khabib Nurmagomedov teases big news for protege. Although UFC Hall of Famer Khabib Nurmagomedov has retired from MMA and has stepped back from his coaching duties, the former lightweight champion has remained extremely active behind the scenes. Ahead of his protege, Imam Shafi Aliyev's upcoming Bellator MMA bout against Paige Van Zandt's husband, Austin Vanderford, at Bellator 297 in June, Nurmagomedov has teased some pretty big news. Without giving many details, Nurmagomedov posted a cryptic message on his Instagram story. Thanks to Instagram's translation feature, fans have been able to speculate as to what the Eagle meant when he wrote, "August is going to kick in for Aliyev." On one hand, some have speculated that Aliyev could be negotiating behind the scenes to make a quick turnaround after his upcoming fight with Vanderford in June. On the other hand, some have speculated that he could also be negotiating behind the scenes for something else, like a move to the UFC. Of course, Aliyev could still be under contract with Bellator MMA after the fight. However, without knowing the details of his contract, fans have been left to speculate amongst themselves. With an unblemished 9-0 record to his name, Aliyev has continued to dominate inside the cage. After an impressive run under the UAE Warriors banner, Aliyev picked up an August win under Nurmagomedov's Eagle FC banner before signing with Bellator MMA. After joining the promotion, Aliyev picked up his big win over Sean Connor Fallon back in November by a doctor stoppage to extend his record to 9-0. Now, with the chance to pick up a win over Vanderford, it sounds as though Aliyev is setting the stage for something big. And now for our breaking news story of the day. We have Dana White canceling a UFC fight. Khamzat's training partner, Guram Kutateladze, is out of his fight against Jamie Mullarkey at UFC Vegas 74. Jamie Mullarkey will now face a new unknown opponent who will step in last minute at UFC Vegas 74. Guram Kutateladze has now pulled out of 4 of his last 6 fights since signing with the UFC in 2020. What do you think of this situation? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell to stay up to date with MMA news every day. Here are the top comments from yesterday's video. Hamzat saying Paulo beat nobody is hilarious. UFC cross-promoting Francis sounds like Conor apologizing to Khabib for everything he had said on camera. Besides, it's just a business, of course. Dana needs to do what Bellator did with Ryzen, UFC versus PFL, Jones versus Ngannou. Would mean a lot for the fans to see that super fight. And those were the top comments from yesterday's video. If you want to be featured on our next video, make sure to leave a comment and don't forget to check out yesterday's video in case you missed it.